Imagine traveling in the Middle Ages. The roads are long, often unsafe, and the sun sets early. There are no highways or service stations. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel if you are interested in historical topics and leave a like on the video. Today, we will not talk about kings or castles, but about the real meeting places of the people. The inns, noisy, unpredictable, and full of life, were much more than just a place to sleep. If you think that waiting in a restaurant is annoying, wait until you find out what it was like to eat, sleep, and survive in a medieval inn. We will discover their foods, their beds, their dangers, and why they were so important back then. Come with me, let's go through that old wooden door together. With the smell of wood and something resembling food in the air. Don't expect a fancy menu or gluten-free options. Eating here was an adventure. The main course was the stew, but not a well-cooked one. It was a thick, variable concoction made from whatever the innkeeper had hunted, gathered, or retrieved that day. One day you might have rabbits, if you were lucky. Other days, squirrels, hedgehogs, or even crows. Travelers joked that asking what was in the stew was the quickest way to lose your appetite. The stew was served in wooden bowls, accompanied by a piece of hard bread, called trencher. This bread was neither soft nor spongy. It was so dense that it served as a plate. It soaked up the juices of the stew until it was soft enough to eat. If you didn't finish it, the leftovers were given to the poor or used to feed the pigs. Nothing was wasted. The innkeepers were masters of recycling. The morning's leftovers went into the evening's stew, and the cauldron was rarely emptied. Some merchants swore that certain famous stews had been simmering for years, with new ingredients added every day, like an eternal soup. The principal drink was beer, but not the light beer of today. It was cloudy, thick, and sometimes like bread soup. In many places, laws required inns to have bread and beer available at all times. In England, by the 21st century, inns along the main roads were required to provide food and drink for travelers. An obligation taken very seriously. Beer was not only popular, it was safer than water, which was often contaminated by waste or animals. So when the innkeeper offered you another pint, he wasn't just after your money, it was almost a public health service. If you had more coins, you could aspire to something better. A piece of cheese that wasn't completely moldy, or a recognizable piece of meat. Fresh fish was a luxury reserved for inns near rivers or coasts. But even there, fresh was an optimistic term. Cutlery was essential: a knife, a spoon, and your hands. Forks were almost unknown, and table manners were reduced to not stabbing your neighbor while taking the bread. Everyone ate together at long wooden tables, sharing stories, gossip, and sometimes more than one germ. Meals were served at fixed times, and the dining room was a hive of activity. You might find yourself sitting next to a local farmer, a spice merchant, or a pilgrim who smelled of 3 days of walking. Those tables were where news traveled. A merchant could tell about the prices of wool in Flanders, while a troubadour spread rumors of a distant battle. Eating at an inn was not just about nourishing yourself, it was about connecting with the world. Cultural and social exchanges. In these places, languages, customs, fashions, and different ways of seeing the world crossed paths. A merchant from the north could learn an Andalusian recipe. A French troubadour might carry off a German tale to turn into a ballad, and a young craftsman might meet a master willing to offer him work in another city. In times of war or conflict, inns also served as places of espionage or negotiation. Spies, disguised as travelers, would listen in on conversations, while informal diplomats struck deals by the fire amid laughter and mugs of beer. Inns were not just a mirror of medieval society, they were its beating heart. Over time, many evolved into what we know today as hotels, bars, or restaurants. Some of the oldest still exist, with their crooked beams, stone floors, and legends stuck to the walls. Places that have seen centuries of history pass by, and that even today, if you listen carefully, seem to whisper old songs, gossip, and secrets of a Middle Ages that was more alive and human than you might think. Such were medieval inns. Chaotic, noisy, dangerous, but also full of life, connections, and humanity. Because in the end, beyond the cold, fleas, or hard bread, what medieval travelers were looking for was not just a roof and food, but a little company along the way. Medieval inns represent a fundamental element in understanding daily life in the Middle Ages, well beyond their primary function of offering food and lodging. These places, often located along pilgrimage routes, trade routes, or near villages and cities, they were meeting points for wayfarers, merchants, pilgrims, knights, and farmers. Different histories, cultures, and dialects were intertwined within them, creating a rich and varied social fabric that reflected the complexity of an era too often reduced to stereotypes of obscurity and backwardness. Despite the often Spartan conditions and poor hygiene, inns were spaces where the need and desire for sociality were mixed. Around the hearth, with a bowl of steaming soup and a mug of wine, legends were told, news was exchanged, trade agreements were made, and travel experiences were shared. In a world without modern means of communication, inns were also centers for the dissemination of information and oral culture. For many travelers, the inn represented not only a safe refuge from the fatigue and dangers of the road, brigands, wild animals, bad weather, but also a place where they felt welcomed, recognized, part of something. In this sense, they played a role comparable to that which we attribute today to certain public places, such as stations, bars, or hostels, points of passage, but also of meeting, and sometimes of turning points. Reflecting on medieval inns means immersing oneself in a dynamic and deeply human world, made of primary needs, but also of dreams, stories, curiosity, and desire for connection. They tell us of a humanity on the move, which, despite the harshness of life, sought comfort in the company of others, in shared narratives, and in small moments of warmth. Today, looking at those places with contemporary eyes, we can rediscover their symbolic value. The inn as a metaphor for the journey of life, where everyone brings their own baggage, but finds, at least for one night, a common roof under which to rest. Deep down, amidst the smoke from the fireplace and the din of chatter, lies a desire that has spanned the centuries, that of feeling, even for a short while, at home among strangers. Fourth, that's all for today. Let me know what you think about medieval inns. And don't forget to subscribe if you're interested in these historical topics. See you next time.